Some racing games become legend, others fade into history, but every now and then, there's a game people never stop talking about. Welcome to Replay Garage, the series where we will pull racing classics, hidden gems, and forgotten racers back into the garage to see if they still deserve a spot. Today is Tokyo Xtreme Racer 0 for PlayStation 2. Somehow, I completely missed this one growing up. While everyone else was talking about it, I was off playing other racing games. So this is actually my first experience with what's considered one of the biggest cult classics in the genre. To make things even more interesting, I'm playing it on the Logitech G Cloud through emulation, instead of my original hardware. So, the real question is, after 25 years, does Tokyo Xtreme Racer 0 deserve a permanent parking spot in the Replay Garage? Let's find out. So, what is this game? Before we jump into the gameplay, you might be wondering why the Tokyo Xtreme Racer series has such a devoted following. The franchise actually began on the Dreamcast with the original Tokyo Xtreme Racer, known in Japan as Shuto Battle. It launched during a time when games like Gran Turismo and Need for Speed were dominating the racing genre. So Genki needed to do something different. Instead of focusing on racing tracks or police chases, they built an entire game around late-night highway racing through Tokyo. That idea wasn't made up either. Highway racing on the Shuto Expressway had been around for decades, but it became legendary during the 1990s thanks to groups like the famous Midnight Club. The atmosphere, the modified Japanese cars, and the one-on-one battles become a huge part of the Japanese car culture. Tokyo Xtreme Racer captured that feeling in a way that very few games ever have. Released in 2001 for the PlayStation 2, Tokyo Xtreme Racer 0 refined that formula even further. Instead of racing around closed circuits or point-to-point mountain roads, you're cruising Tokyo's expressways at night. Rival racers roam the highways, and when you find someone you want to challenge, you simply flash your headlights, start a race. But here's what really makes this game stand out. There isn't a finish line. Instead, both drivers have what's called an SP, or spirit point meter. Every mistake drains it. Fall behind your opponent, you lose SP. Hit traffic, you lose SP. Slam into a guardrail, yep, more SP gone. The goal isn't necessarily to finish first, it's to completely drain your opponent's spirit points before they drain yours. Even today, it's one of the most unique racing systems I've ever seen, because every battle feels like a duel instead of a traditional race. On top of that, there's a surprisingly deep progression system. Winning races earns you money that can be spent on engine upgrades, suspension, weight reduction, appearance parts, and plenty of other modifications as you slowly build a car capable of taking on tougher rivals. Between the neon-lit highways, the memorable atmospheres, the customizations, and the constant climb towards stronger opponents, it's easy to see why so many racing fans consider this one of the greatest cult classics in the genre. Now it's my turn to find out if the legend really lives up to the hype. The very first thing I noticed was actually the music. Now, I'm not going to be too harsh because this game is over 25 years old, but it definitely has that early 2000 racing soundtrack. It isn't really my style, but to be fair, this kind of techno music was everywhere in the car culture back then. Just look at the Fast and the Furious. It fits the era perfectly, even if it isn't something I'd throw on a playlist today, since I'll probably mute most of it for copyright reasons. Anyway, it wasn't something that made a huge impression on me. The cars, on the other hand, I was pleasantly surprised. For a 2002 game, there's actually a fantastic selection of Japanese cars, and the models themselves still look surprisingly good. Now, they don't have the official manufacturer names because of licensing, but honestly, you don't really need them. One look at the car and you immediately know whether you're staring at a Skyline, an RX-7, a Supra, or AE86. Obviously, they don't compare to modern games, but for 2001, I think they still hold up pretty well. One thing I wasn't expecting was being able to customize the license plate. It's such a small feature, but those little details always make older racing games feel charming. It isn't something that changes the gameplay, but it makes your car feel like your car, and I always appreciate that. The menus also deserve some credit. They're simple, no unnecessary clutter. Everything is exactly where you expect it to be. And within just a few minutes, I was already buying upgrades and getting back on the road instead of digging through the menu. Speaking of upgrades, if you've played the brand new Tokyo Xtreme Racer, you'll probably notice something almost immediately. The customization feels incredibly familiar. Honestly, I was impressed by how much of the original DNA Genki carried over into the modern game. The layout, the progression, and the overall philosophy all feel connected. One thing I especially liked was how simple the upgrade system is. Modern racing games sometimes overwhelm you with dozens of different upgrade paths, tuning options, and cosmetic parts before you even finish your first race. Tokyo Extreme Racer Zero doesn't do that. Whether you're upgrading performance or changing bumpers and hoods, you are usually choosing between just a handful of options. Sometimes less, really, is more. Instead of spending an hour in the garage, you're back on the highway racing within a few minutes. You can definitely tell where the modern game got a lot of its inspiration. Then came my first race. And, well, I lost pretty badly. Going into it, I honestly expected to be competitive right away. Instead, I quickly realized this game wasn't going to make things easy. The controls actually felt responsive, but once the speed started climbing, the handling became much more difficult than I expected. Even driving in a straight line sometimes felt like the car wanted to wander around the highway. At first, I blamed the controls, then I blamed the car. Looking back, it was probably a little bit of both. I also don't think the AE86 was the best choice for the first playthrough. Knowing what I know now, I probably would have started with something a little forgiving. The game was definitely harder than I expected, but honestly, I kind of like that. Now, let's talk about the engine sound. Let's just be honest, these cars don't exactly sound amazing. I'm not just talking about my car, the rival cars, the traffic cars, and some of them sounded like an angry vacuum cleaner flying down the expressway. But again, this was the PlayStation 2 era. Technology has came a long way since then. Oddly enough, though, the sound design almost became nostalgic. It reminded me of sitting in front of the TV playing games like Need for Speed Underground after school. Maybe sounds haven't aged particularly well, but the memories they brought back definitely have. Despite losing the race, I wasn't frustrated enough to quit. Instead, I thought, maybe I just need a few upgrades. So back to the garage we went, adding some performance parts. We did nothing but add power, baby. Surely, that would fix everything. I headed back out, onto the highway, and I lost again. At that point, I started asking the question every racing game player asks sooner or later. Is it the car, or is it me? Naturally, I decided it was definitely the car. So back into the shop I went. This time, I focused more on handling than horsepower. After upgrading the suspension, things immediately started feeling better. The car wasn't nearly as twitchy, and I finally started feeling like I had a little more control. Fortunately, that didn't magically make me a better driver. I was still clipping guardrails, still crashing into traffic, and I was quickly discovering just how unforgiving this game could be. Some of these AI drivers felt like they were running 180 miles per hour while I was doing everything I could to keep up. Then, finally, I got my first win. And honestly, it felt earned. This wasn't one of those racing games where you accidentally stumbled into victory after enough attempts. You actually have to fight for every race. And speaking of fighting, let's just say there may have been a little bit of rubbing involved. To be fair, the AI had been using my car as a pinball for the last several races, so I figured it was only fair to return the favor. Every overtake mattered, every mistake mattered, every decision mattered. When I finally watched my opponent's spirit points meter disappear, it was genuinely satisfying. That was the moment everything started to click. I finally understood why this series has such a loyal fan base, and it's also left me wondering, would a different starter car have made this experience a little easier? I guess that's something I'll have to find out next time. Now, some games have a learning curve. Surprisingly, I don't think the learning curve is actually that steep. I've already spent some time with the brand new Tokyo Xtreme Racer, which released roughly 25 years after this. And one thing immediately stood out to me. The core gameplay philosophy hasn't really changed. If you've never played a Tokyo Xtreme Racing game before, I honestly think you could jump in this one and understand the basics within just a few races. The menus are straightforward, upgrading your car is easy to understand, and after just one race, the spirit point system makes perfect sense. There was only one menu that confused me a little at first, and that was the tires. Instead of simply buying new tires, you also changed the wheels and a few other components together. Once I figured that out, though, it wasn't really an issue. The game itself isn't difficult to learn, it's difficult to master. That's an important difference. Tokyo Xtreme Racer Zero rewards patience far more than aggression. The smoother you drive, the more successful you'll be. If you're constantly bouncing off guardrails, slamming into traffic, and making sudden steering corrections, like I was during my first few races, you're probably going to have a rough time. The game isn't trying to confuse you, it's trying to make you become a better driver. I also think your starting car plays a much bigger role than I expected. Looking back, I probably wouldn't have started with the AE86. That doesn't mean it's a bad car, it just wasn't the best fit for my driving style as someone learning the game for the first time. I probably needed something with more power. So, honestly, the game clicked almost immediately. My driving, not so much. After the first race, I already understood the gameplay loop. Challenge a rival, drain the SP points, earn money, upgrade your car, challenge someone stronger, repeat. It's a simple formula, and that's part of what makes it so addictive. The challenge was never understanding what the game wanted me to do. The challenge was actually doing it. These AI drivers don't give you anything for free. They are quick, they are aggressive, and they'll force you into traffic if you leave the door open, and they'll punish every little mistake you make. At first, I just thought this game was just brutally difficult. But after a few races, I realized something. The AI wasn't unbeatable. I was simply trying to drive this game like every other arcade racer I've played. Once I slowed down a little, became smoother with my steering, and started picking my moments instead of forcing every overtake, the race became much more manageable. That's when everything finally clicked. Not because the game became easier, but because I became a slightly better driver. And honestly, that's something I really respect. Now, the real question, does this game still actually hold up? I actually think yes, but with an asterisk. Let's start with the graphics. There's no getting around it. This is a 25-year-old PlayStation 2 game. By today's standards, it obviously looks dated. The environments are fairly simple, the textures are low resolution, and you aren't going to mistake this for a modern racing game. But here's the thing, the cars themselves have actually aged surprisingly well. Even today, they're recognizable, detailed enough to appreciate, and still enjoyable to look at while racing through Tokyo at night. So no, I don't think the graphics have truly stood the test of time, but I also don't think that's what made this game special in the first place. For me, the real stars of the show are the gameplay and the atmosphere. The atmosphere is absolutely iconic. Driving the Shuto Expressway in the middle of the night, weaving through traffic while hunting down the rival racers, still creates a feeling that very few racing games have managed to capture. If you're a fan of Japanese car culture, you'll probably understand exactly why this setting has become legendary. Now, let's talk about the gameplay. Does it still hold up? I think it does. It definitely has its flaws. Some of the early opponents feel much faster than they should. The AI can be extremely aggressive. And there are moments where it almost feels like the game is trying to throw you into every guardrail on the highway. But strangely, those rough edges almost became part of the experience. The challenge makes every victory feel meaningful. When you finally beat an opponent that has been giving you trouble, it feels like you've actually earned it. Now, let's move on to customization. No, it isn't on the same level as modern Need for Speed games where you can spend hours changing every tiny detail of your car. But honestly, I don't think it needs to be. There's still plenty to customize. Performance upgrades, bumpers, wings, underglow, license plates. It's enough to make your car feel unique without overwhelming you with the endless menus. Sometimes simple really is better. Instead of spending an hour building a car, you are back on the highway racing within a few minutes. I appreciate that. So, does Tokyo Xtreme Racer Zero still hold up? I think it does. You just have to meet it on its own terms. If you're expecting a modern arcade racer where you dominate races within 5 minutes, this probably isn't the game for you. But if you enjoy classic racing games, love Japanese car culture, or simply enjoy games that reward patience and improvement, there's still something really special here. The atmosphere remains unforgettable. The progression keeps pulling you back for one more race, and every victory feels satisfying because you genuinely had to work for it. 25 years later, while people still talk about this game, looking back at my time with Tokyo Extreme Racer Zero, there's a few things that genuinely surprised me. The biggest surprise was just how familiar everything felt. Going into this, I expected the modern Tokyo Extreme Racer to be completely different from a game that was released back in 2001. Instead, it almost felt like I was seeing where the modern game got its blueprint. The menus felt similar, the progression felt similar, even a lot of the rivals' names and overall presentation reminded me of the newest game. It really shows how much respect Inky has for this series and how little they've changed the formula over the years. Another thing that exceeded my expectations was the car roster. For a PlayStation 2 game, the selection is honestly impressive. All of the legendary Japanese cars you'd hope to see are here, and even though they don't carry the official manufacturer names, you instantly know what you're looking at. And if you're a JDM fan, there's a lot to appreciate. Now, if I had to pick one disappointment, it would definitely be the AI. Not because they're unbeatable, but because they're almost too aggressive at times. They'll push you towards traffic, they'll lean on your car through corners, and they'll happily send you towards a guardrail if you give them the opportunity. It can definitely become frustrating during the early hours of the game. And of course, after getting shoved around for several races, I may have started giving a little payback myself. Let's just say the racing got a little less clean after that. So, after finally playing one of the most talked about cult classics in racing game history, what do I think? Tokyo Xtreme Racer Zero isn't perfect. The graphics have clearly aged, the engine sounds are a product of the PlayStation 2 era, the AI can be brutally aggressive, and the difficulty might scare away players looking for a more casual experience. But underneath all of those rough edges, there's an incredible racing game. The progression keeps pulling you into just one more race. The customization is deeper than I expected. The atmosphere is still one of the best I've experienced in a racing game. And the Spirit Point battle system remains one of the most unique mechanics I've ever played. Now, understand why people still talk about it. This series, more than 20 years later. Would I recommend it? If you enjoy a challenge, absolutely. If you love Japanese car culture, without question. If you're curious about where the modern Tokyo Extreme Racing series came from, you owe it to yourself to give this one and a bunch of the others a try. But if you're looking for a easy arcade racer where you can dominate races right from the start, this probably isn't the game for you. As for me, I'll definitely come back. And next time, I'll probably pick a different starter car. Well, it's finally time to answer the question. Does Tokyo Extreme Racer Zero deserve a spot in the replay garage? Just so I can help y'all understand, before we go on to give our replay garage rating, I should give a little information on what the ratings are. A permanent spot is obviously an all-time keeper, a game I'd happily come back to and recommend to anyone. It's the top of the top. The next ranking would be Weekend Driver, a really fun game that's worth playing, but it's not one I'd keep coming back to all the time. Following that, we have Project Car. There's something special here, but it has noticeable flaws it may take some patience or a love for the genre to fully appreciate. And then we have the worst of the worst, Scrapyard. Unfortunately, this one just doesn't hold up for me. It doesn't earn a spot in the replay garage. As you can tell, I used car themes to do this. Now, it's finally time to answer that question. Does Tokyo Extreme Racer Zero deserve a spot in the replay garage? Replay garage rating is Project Car. Just like a real project car, it isn't perfect. It's rough around the edges, it takes patience, it asks you to learn, it asks you to improve, but underneath all those flaws is something genuinely special. The more time you invest in it, the more rewarding it becomes. For me, that's exactly what a project car represents. And that's exactly where Tokyo Extreme Racer Zero belongs. Now, I want to hear from you. Does Tokyo Extreme Racer Zero deserve a permanent spot in the replay garage, or would you leave it parked outside? And while you're down in the comments, let me know what racing game I should pull into the garage next. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you next time right here in the replay garage.